Welcome to Crushing One Now, a podcast about how to wing your way through a cold call you did not prepare for. Definitely something I've never done, something I did not do recently just this week, but can advise on if you'd like to hear about it. But no, you guys, welcome to episode 10 of Crushing One L. It's very exciting. We're so excited that you guys are joining us. Thank you so much for listening. So yeah, this week we have an interview with Matt Dumont, who is one of our incredible team members here with Demon and with Crushing 1L, and who is also a practicing attorney and a wealth of information. And we're going to be doing like a little amicus brief. That's what I'm calling our interview episodes, the amicus briefs. So I hope you guys enjoy. I know Matt has so many incredible things to offer, and yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to hear from him, and I will catch you on the next episode.
Welcome to Crushing 1L, a show about what it's really like to survive and thrive during your first year of law school. I'm your host, Abhi Sharma. I'm a teacher and tutor at LSAT Demon and an incoming 1L at Penn Law up in Philadelphia. Today I'm joined by Matt Dumont, a fellow teacher and tutor and many other things at LSAT Demon. Do you want to take a second to introduce yourself, Matt?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, thanks for having me on, Abhi. I've been with the Demon since 2019, which feels crazy to say at this point. I had a brief hiatus for a year, for a little bit, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I've done lots of things. I've been a teacher, tutor. I've been the operations manager at points, but now I am the head teacher and head tutor, and oversee curriculum development and a couple other projects here and there. So that's
Awesome.
good
And
times.
folks could be seeing it peek through your t-shirt, but you're also a proud alum of Maryland Cary Law. I think
I
we
am.
share a Cary. I'm going to Penn Cary Law, and I think it's the same Cary. So that's huge.
It might be, or it might be
Or a different
Maryland
Cary.
trying to cling on. We are
I love
definitely
it.
not in the same stratosphere. I loved my time at Maryland, but we are not
Awesome.
quite in the same stratosphere as Penn is. So
Well, you are a great law student. From what I hear, maybe I only hear good things. And then from what I can tell, you've had a stellar career so far as an attorney. So I'm super excited to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time again.
my pleasure.
Speaking of Maryland, so correct me if I'm wrong. And LSAT team and listeners that are coming from other pods, they may know this lore about you. You used to be an actor. Is that true?
That
Okay, so
is.
talk to me. So maybe for the thousandth time, maybe the millionth time you told the story, how do you go from being in the performing arts to thinking I actually need to go to law school, and then going through the whole process of becoming an LSAT teacher or becoming an LSAT student first,
Totally.
I suppose, and then doing that prep.
Yeah, so yeah, I feel like everybody has an interesting origin story. Mine is just unique to me, right? So I went to school, I went to undergrad for acting. I caught the theater bug when I was in high school or something like that, and started to perform non-professionally and then professionally. And I went to college for a little bit, close to my home, in at Kent State University. I started off as a BFA musical theater performer there, and then I needed to get a little bit further away from home and get out of Ohio. I love Ohio, lots of fondness for Ohio. Grew up there, but I had the opportunity to transfer to Marymount Manhattan College, on the Upper East Side of New York City. And I went there for BFA acting and became a stage performer. I graduated with a slightly different degree, BA theater performance. It was a little bit more modern, but I was really interested in going out and being a performer. And I was for, gosh, over 10 years, something like that. I did a bunch of national tours. I performed regional theaters all across the United States. I've performed in every single state east of the Mississippi and most of the Great Plains, Rocky Mountains area. I didn't ever really make it to the West Coast for performance, other than a little bit in California. But I was very fortunate in my career. I did something like 50 shows. I did a
Wow.
bunch of film and TV. One of the things that happened was I met my wife in New York City. She was also a performer. And as we were sort of like navigating being two artists together, we decided that LA was maybe a place we wanted to move to. I had in that time also gravitated from being a stage performer towards film and TV as well. So I did a bunch of, indie stuff, and I was talk about bread and butter. I was a stand-in on a lot of the TV shows in New York. That's what I did to make my ends meet.
The
For
SVUs and the Law and Orders and all those,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I've been on many episodes of SVU, and I still think it's very funny that I was a prosecutor on Blue Bloods. Now, I'm not saying that this was crazy. Like, this is nothing like big. You might recognize me going along in like the background type stuff. Nothing big, but it paid my rent.
Sure.
Um,
And your
I,
part said prosecutor,
yeah,
which is a premonition, I think. That's
totally.
awesome.
I was a prosecutor on Blue Bloods for an entire season before
Wow.
doing before we moved to LA. But I transitioned out of performing once we got there. My wife is still doing the art. She's a director now, and I kind of pivoted. I pivoted towards other things. I was really interested in the job that I was doing at the time, which was I worked for a tech startup in the photo booth industry. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. Really thought about like, hey, I didn't want to continue on in that for like my entire career. It was interesting. I learned so much, doing operations for like a real company. But I always had been interested in politics. I'd always been interested in policy making, like legislation, like those kinds of things. And I looked around something like 2017, 2018 was like, well, who's doing that? And it's a whole bunch of lawyers, let's be blunt.
Yeah.
And so I started to investigate law school and was like, well, maybe I'll go for law school. If there's any part of that journey that kind of sucks, I'll get off. Like I'll get off the train and go somewhere else and do something else with my life. I fell in love with the LSAT so much that I'm still teaching it, 7, 8 years later, and joined an LSAT prep company and went to law school, did all the things. So it was kind of meandering, but actor to lawyer didn't feel crazy to me.
It's not crazy when you're living it, I will say. So it's like what do they say? The days go slow, but the months go a little faster, and the years fly by.
Oh my God,
So yeah, it's
that is so
that's
apt.
really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And that's like to anybody listening that is maybe a little bit worried that they have missed the train for whatever reason on a career in the legal profession. Like, certainly not the case.
No,
Certainly not
no,
the case.
all walks of life. I mean, that's one of the things that
Yeah,
I kind of love about law. I mean, there's many things that I don't, but there's one thing that I love about law, and that's you can come from any walk of life. Yes, there are tons
yeah.
of people who are English majors, psychology majors, criminal justice studies, all that kind of stuff. Yes, absolutely. And we need people that have that kind of background. But just as validly, military, just as
Right.
validly, actor, just as validly, science, STEM, because the law touches all aspects of our lives, and realistically, we need lawyers that represent our broader community. We need people that look like, sound like, have identities reminiscent of who you are. And I say the proverbial you. We need representation in that way in the legal community that matches our broader country.
I agree. And like, at the risk of maybe sounding too philosophical, if anybody's under the impression that they can practice law in a way that doesn't leave a certain sphere of like a topic area or a certain concept or field even, folks, bad news for you. You're going to be doing all
Touches
kinds of legal
everything.
work that's going to touch all sorts of worlds. So the
Yep.
more you know about the world, honestly, the better.
Yeah.
At least that I'm biased, and I think Matt's biased too. We went and lived lives before coming to law school, but that's okay.
Yeah. If you do the
Yeah.
math, I'm in my 40s. So
Nobody needs to do the math. Nobody needs to do the math. So Matt, how did you decide on Maryland?
sure.
Uh, and I've heard that I know why you chose,
Yeah.
uh, but I want to hear you tell that story again and
Yeah.
maybe Any expectations you had coming to Maryland? What were you thinking
Sure.
as you hit accept and you got excited about it?
Yeah, so I applied, I followed the Demon Way. I applied broadly to a lot of different schools in a lot of different areas and at a lot of like sort of different rankings. I shot my shot at Stanford and Harvard, Yale. Like I applied for those schools as well. Smattering of the T14. But the bread and butter of my applications were schools probably from like the 30s to the 60s. I had a couple above that, UCLA, GW. But I was applying to a bunch of schools in the Midwest because that's where I'm from, Ohio State, Wisconsin, those kind of schools along that belt there. I applied to a bunch of schools in the Southwest, California, Los Angeles, UC Irvine, UCLA, Arizona, Pepperdine, like the sort of Southwest contingent. And then I applied to a bunch of schools in the DC area because those were kind of the three areas of the country that I was looking at. It's where family is. It's where I was in Los Angeles at the time. So I had no problem going for that either. But Maryland was one of the ones I applied to because it's in the DC area. I applied to UVA and GW and Georgetown, Maryland. Um, I applied broadly because I wanted my best opportunity to go for free. Going for free is really important to me because I am definitely not being funded by my parents. you know, I'm married and I'm going into my third career. Debt is a very real thing. I'd much rather buy a house than JD. So I applied very broadly. I applied to 22 different schools. I also have a slightly lower GPA for, like the top. I got into the 170s. I ended up with a 171 on my LSAT, but I was applying with a 373 for GPA, which for like Harvard, Yale, Stanford is a little low. It's a little low for schools in the 30s, but I was showing up with an LSAT that's, 10 points ahead of their 75th percentile, like they're going to accept me. So I applied pretty broadly, got full rides to like 15 or 16 schools, and was looking at the various options, gauging that with my wife to, see what would fit for our family's goals as well. And Maryland crossed a lot of bridges, checked a lot of boxes. It was full ride for me. It was in a place that's close to my family. My parents live in Frederick. My brother lives in DC. It's close to the art scene for my wife. She could have a career in the Baltimore area. DC is not far. Philly's not far. New York's not far. So there was a lot of things that were coming together in a good confluence. And I think my final three was like UCLA, Maryland, and GW, with really UCLA versus Maryland. Um, UCLA was not a full ride. And so that was part of it. And also, while it's a significantly better school, as far as like the rankings are concerned, uh, the move back to the East Coast was the right one for my family. And so Maryland was the ultimate winner. All of this during COVID, no less. So
Yes.
I
So a
selected
lot
sight unseen and moved across the country during a pandemic.
a lot of virtual visits and a lot of Zoom, interviews and stuff and
Yeah,
I get it. I get it.
yeah. My entire college like tour trip got canceled, and to be honest with you, I don't think it would have mattered.
Yeah.
I was going to go to a bunch of East Coast schools to like set foot on campus and be wowed at Accepted Students Day, which sure, I think there's value to some of that, but realistically, much bigger value was full ride, location. That's what I was
I
looking
was gonna
for.
say when you weigh and, pardon my language, but the grown ass adult stuff versus
Yep.
the walking around seeing the pretty buildings and obviously folks if you get the chance to go to an admitted students day I do recommend going if
Yeah.
you can do it if it's convenient but uh it's more of that's a victory lap that's not the
Mhm.
goal by any means or even the things you should be focusing on. A full
Yeah.
ride is so huge. It's $250,000. That's a
Yeah, if not
house,
more. If not
if not
more, right?
more. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that's a house. That's debt. That's life changing.
Yeah. I think the way that I tried to use the sort of admitted students day, putting my feet on campus for tours or whatever, was more of a sanity check. I was looking for
Yeah,
reasons to get rid of schools when I went rather than reasons to say yes. I'd already gotten the yes from them. Now I'm trying to weigh the sort of various things that matter to me and my family. uh, the library being awesome isn't a reason to go. The library being a dumpster fire is a reason to maybe not. you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was
Or seeing
indicative
the
of
area.
bigger
Yeah.
problems when I went to see a particular school, and I was like, "Woof, not going here."
Right, right. Things can break, but nothing on the tour should make it. And
Yeah,
yeah, like see the area because if you're gonna be moving your family out there, you want it to
totally.
be in a okay area, walkable. Maybe I don't know. People have different
Yep.
uh preferences, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So I guess the next question I would have for you is you're set on Maryland. You made an amazing choice. You got so fortunate and worked so hard to set this up for your family, and you move out east. What was your what was like maybe a preconceived notion that you had? What was an expectation you had of the first day of law school, or even just the whole process, the orientation, being a student again for the first time in a long time? What was going through
Yeah.
your head?
Yeah. Well, there's some things in there that are a little bit unique, I think, starting law school in the fall of 2020, because we thought that we were going to be in person, and then schools started canceling, going remote, during the month of August. And I was one of the people that was
Oh,
affected. So my expectation was moving across the country to go to law school in person, and then my entire first year was on Zoom. So that was a little bit of a expectation. I was expecting to have orientation, and we didn't. you know, so
wow.
there is some uniqueness there. But to be perfectly honest, Zoom law school for the first year was it didn't bother me so much. I'm used to doing project management. I'm used to working remotely. I'm used to doing those kinds of things because I was doing those kinds of things before COVID. And
Right.
so it felt more like, oh, okay, well, job is from my bedroom in my pajamas instead of going into the law school every day, which felt fine for me. It was a little bit harder to find like study buddies in that way because we weren't as accessible to each other, in the hallways after class, having lunch in the courtyard, like that kind of stuff. You did miss out on some of those kinds of things. And so my expectations there were a little bit dashed. But I think the expectation there was like, well, I'm here to learn. What sort of medium I do that through doesn't matter quite as much as my ability to learn from my professors, do the reading, do that kind of stuff. So focusing on the right things in that moment, I think, is probably transferable to the people who are going now. Your job is to show up on day one prepared for class, and I preview spoiler alert. You're going to have reading before your first day of class.
There's no syllabus week, folks. There's no syllabus week.
There's no syllabus week in law school.
Yeah. That's so fun. That's so. I mean, it's sad. It's really sad that a whole year of learning happened virtually. But like you said, I mean, it
Yeah,
is what it is. I think
that's what
people
it
like
is.
us that have that have worked. I think worked before school. Um, the job is the job. The world
Yeah.
is a lot more virtual now than it
Yeah,
was 10,
everybody was
15 years
affected by
ago.
COVID anyway, so like
Exactly.
that's not a
So.
unique story.
No, for sure. Were you worried at all? And maybe this is just some of my anxiety leaking through, but I've been removed from the academic environment for a few
Mm,
years now as well. Were you
yeah, thanks
worried
for coming
about
back to
that
us.
transition? Like transitioning from being like a grown-ass adult, you had bills, you had a
Yeah.
job, versus now you're a student again. Was that weird?
Yes, it was, and it was particularly more weird because of sort of the gap in my educational experience. I graduated from undergrad in 2007, And so going back to law school in 2020, 13 years later, a lot had changed about how academia is done in 13 years.
Yeah.
We blink our eyes and a decade passes, right? But in a decade, a lot of technology happens. When I was going to law school, in undergrad, Zoom wasn't a fucking thing, right?
Right.
Zoom was not a thing.
Skype was still a business that existed, and now they're bankrupt.
Yeah, yes. Skype was like barely a thing. Like text
Right.
when I went to school, texting was still limited per month, right?
Right. Yeah. You ran out of minutes. You ran out of
Yeah,
minutes.
you ran out of minutes, you
Yeah.
ran out of messages, all this stuff, and it makes me feel very old saying that kind of stuff out loud. But um the difference between undergrad for me was like Blackboard wasn't a thing. Like I had no idea what Blackboard was. I had no idea about Collaborate Ultra and like these kinds of things that are, fundamental and people Teams was not a thing. I also went to school for acting, which is a lot of like for lack of a better way, physical activity because we're like rolling around on the floor, like finding our center, doing these kinds of avant-garde stuff. Um, Compared to a very rigorous academic institution, just tons and tons and tons of reading. I felt very comfortable in that transition because of my work experience. I want to reiterate that law school is much more like a job than I think it is like most undergrads for most people, unless you are reading just tons and tons of like project management based projects, like that's what it feels like. It really is much more project oriented of like, oh, I'm going to check this box. I've read this thing. I understand what the holding is. I'm going to check this box. I've read this thing over and over and over again until your eyes bleed. That is much more like project management and what my experience was in my work environment than my undergrad was. So I felt comfortable making that transition because of my work experience. I'm not sure I would have otherwise.
Yeah, I mean it's a professional school after all, right? It's
Yeah.
they expect you to act professionally, and part of that is being professional about managing
Yep.
your time,
Yep.
uh, staying on top of your deliverables, which
Yep.
is, that's a very like work
To,
buzzword word,
yeah.
but that's
Can
that's what
you
it is at the end of the day.
can you force yourself to get up today and do the things you need to get through this day in order to do the things that you need to get through this week, to get through this month, to get through this semester? Like that
Yeah.
is law school to a T.
So I have to imagine, I mean, yeah, your project management background and just being
Mhm.
you were a professional adult for years and years and years.
Yeah.
You already had some of those habits. Do you have any advice for maybe somebody who's listening to this going, shoot, I don't have a decade of work experience. Like, am I going to
Yeah.
be behind or,
Yeah. I mean, my big advice is take a gap year. Like go get a job, do real things, take a gap decade. Who cares? Law school's still going to be there. I realize that that's not like people are going to be like, oh, I'm not going to take a gap decade. I mean, I took a gap 13. So, um,
and we
the,
argue with students every day, not argue, but maybe fight. Yeah, it's more antagonistic. We fight them every day, every week, trying to ask them like why they think they need to apply right now. Everybody
yeah,
wants to apply right now.
I'll do the more positive. I agree with the word
Yes.
fight. I think fight is
Yes.
right, but I'll use the word of maybe we guide. We try to guide people
Yes.
to
Yes.
in
Yes.
the alternative opportunity, which is that you don't have to go today. You can develop all kinds of wonderful life experience that is going to have meaningful impact on you as a person and as an attorney that are going to be very positive. And your ultimate like the ultimate effect on your legal career is like a year or two. I think it's perfectly reasonable for the vast majority of people go to law school between 28 and 32, right? And so if you are like 23 and are like, no, I'm going to die tomorrow if I don't go to law school. I want to push back against that idea. I want to guide you towards getting a job for a little bit because it's going to help you develop as a human that is going to only serve you well in your legal career and as your career as a law student. Um,
And just no matter what career you end up pursuing, you may change your
to-
mind at 24 or
totally,
25 and decide you don't want to be a lawyer. And guess what? The years that you spent developing
totally,
professional habits and skills is going to pay
totally.
off.
So for the people that are like looking around and going, well, I'm accepted to law school, I've paid my deposit, I'm going
Right.
this
It's
fall.
May. It's May
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
going in August. Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of like longer term advice, maybe not a little bit applicable. So the things that I would advise to you is take care of yourself, develop good habits now. Start going to the gym now because it's going to be really easy to not go during law school. So if you develop those kinds of habits that take care of yourself now, you'll be better likely to do it. Um, Read
We
books
should we
for
should start an
pleasure.
LSAT demon. We should start an LSAT demon exercise podcast or something. That would be fun. Little workout
Jim
video.
Jim Demon.
Jim Demon.
Ben would be all
Ben
over
would love
that.
it.
Yeah, Ben would
Yeah.
love it. I think so. I think reading for pleasure, doing that kind of stuff. But there's some stuff out there if you want to check out things that will help you prepare for law school. I think any kind of work experience that you've thought about in the past and had in the past, you're going to lean into that kind of experience. Getting up out every day, forcing yourself to put, one shoe on and then the other is very real. But there's also resources out there that are available for people that want to start, gearing up in the right way for law school. And that's familiarizing yourself a little bit so you hit the ground running in a different way. That's, you know, getting good sleep, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's about being curious, I think, is maybe the best thing to sort of take away is staying curious as you transition towards a very different type of education than you've probably had in the past.
Yeah. That's great advice, and I think staying curious is good life advice
Yeah.
too. So, um, I just wanted to ask, so you mentioned you read a lot for your job.
Yep.
Did you feel like a person who read for pleasure before starting law school, or was that
I did. I was a bookworm. Bookworm as a kid, bookworm as a young adult, bookworm as, even a not so young adult. And the one thing that I don't love about being an attorney is that I read so much for my job that I don't read so much anymore for pleasure. The only time
right?
I really do is when weekends and on vacation. I read earlier today. I finished reading a 6-day trial, which was close to 2,000 pages of transcript, and I'm currently writing a response for something that's due this later this week. That I've read 3 cases and I read a law review article for. As I'm writing like a page and a half of response, I had to read multiple cases to make sure that I'm pulling out the right authority and doing these kinds of stuff. So I'm constantly reading and constantly learning. And after a long day of that, I come home and want to veg in front of house hunters.
Yeah, no, the latest legal thriller doesn't seem so enticing if you just read 6,000 pages
Yeah.
over
Those
the
are the
last
things
several
I
weeks.
still read though. I read John Grisham and
I love John
I love the
Grisham. I
Lincoln Lawyer
love John
series too.
Grisham.
It's great.
Yeah, yeah. Guilty of loving those as well.
Yeah.
So I think you can be interested in law and still like cheesy law books. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So it sounds like you walked in to law school. You were prepared. You felt kind of good.
Mhm.
You were a professional person. Did anything throw a wrench in your plans? Did anything go wrong? Or not even wrong, but like was something especially surprising during your first semester or first year?
Yeah. So I think just learning sort of what law school is and how to brief a case and how to outline and sort of like all these things that you might hear whispered about in like the dark corners and the dark hallways and like this kind of stuff. Plotting your own path through that quagmire can be pretty disconcerting, especially if you don't know what a holding even is. I was fortunate that my school had this sort of like intro to law school thing, which I did. And it was, 2.5, 3 weeks of a class through that was taught by a contracts professor. So it's like a contracts centric, couple weeks of here, read a class, and then we're going to come and discuss it on Zoom, doing these kinds of things was really helpful to help me hit the ground running, but like I still didn't know, the workload. I still didn't know, really how to pluck these things out. That's a whole new way of reading. It's a whole new way of learning that feels so foreign, 5 years later that it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even really remember how disconcerting it felt. But the sheer quantity of drinking from the fire hose that it is just wild. It really is surprising how much you're expected to read. My contracts professor, who happened to be the same person that I was just talking about, assigned us 100 pages of reading per class per week. So that's one class that I had 200 pages of reading for. And I want to be very clear that this reading is size 8 font, double column. It is not size 14 font, single column. You're going to read a page in about 30 seconds, skimming it. This is reading close, nuanced, archaic case law that might take you hours to get through. And that was just one class. So the amount of it was really the thing that I found surprising. I was reading for 7, 8 hours a day, every single day.
That's intense. These ain't picture books, folks. They're not picture
These are,
books.
there are no pictures.
There are no pictures, which is
There are
tough.
no
Which is tough.
pictures.
Um, that's great. Was there a moment where it clicked though, like where you kind of got into the rhythm and you were like, oh, like maybe you look up from a reading and you're like, oh, I actually got that.
Yeah.
Maybe not the first time, but like on the reread, oh, I got that. I mean, was that like a first semester click? Was that a second semester click or a 2L click?
I think here's a lawyer answer for you. That's a continuing to learn click, right?
Yeah.
I'm an attorney, right? Like I am a practicing attorney now. I am better at my job today than I was yesterday. I am better at my job now than I was last month. I am better at my job now than I was a year ago, right? And so I think all of that is a continuing click that you develop. Where there's certain times where I started to go, oh my gosh, this is finally making sense. Absolutely. I think a lot of it started to come together for me during what's called reading week. Or exam prep week. Different schools call it different things, but semester 13 weeks, then you typically have 7 to 10 days before your first exams, and that's called like reading week, and then you have like a week and a half of exams. And so what I recommend to people as a thing that will help towards getting the clicks is you're taking notes during the semester, you're doing these kinds of things, you're developing your outline, and you'll learn what outlines are, and outlines look like different things for different people. Some of them are 8 to 10 pages of all the important concepts. Some of them are 140 pages of everything you covered in the entire semester, and that varies for different people. But when you start to put the things into a single document, when you start to put the proverbial puzzle pieces together of putting stuff in order of, for contracts, oh, we talked about offer for, 3 weeks. Then we talked about acceptance. Then we talked about breach. Then we talked about damages. When you start to go, oh, so this person, here's an offer, they breached it, so the damages, blah, blah, blah. When you start to be able to put that broader sort of doctrinal concept together, it started to form the puzzle picture for me. It's the same thing for torts. Negligence is breach cause. Sorry, is duty, breach, causation, harm. And so we talked about duty for a while. We talked about breach for a while. We talked about causation for a while. And we start to be able to take a step back and go, okay, now I can see how these things lead to one another. Then it becomes this picture. Well, I did that before I got to reading week. I was putting the finishing touches on my outline before I got to reading week so that I could take practice exams. The practice exams are where you're practicing painting that picture, practicing putting that puzzle together on your own to see how you can, if you can do it. It's not the time for actually writing your outline. And so, because I had done that work ahead of time, because I had developed my outline and was ready to hit the ground running on reading week, I was able to really put the puzzle together, and I felt like I was actually grasping the material in the ways that I was supposed to.
That's great advice. And I think while that advice may seem down the line for maybe people listening that are listening is gearing up for their first year, I think just having that big picture moment
Yeah.
ready for you at the end of the line.
Yep.
I think it's a way to keep your sanity because I think from all these conversations I have, it's yeah, you learn things in a vacuum and then all of a sudden it all comes together and it makes
Yep.
sense. And the earlier you can start putting stuff together, I think the better. Um,
Yeah, if you can start finding the corners of the puzzle, right? Like you start off finding the corners. If you can start putting things a little bit together in your own mind, either through like discussions with your study group or peers or your professor at office hours, re-examining your notes. However you're sort of doing that, putting the puzzle together as you go, I think it can be really helpful to understanding the point of all of this, right? Because it's really hard, I think, to get motivated to learn another day if you don't see the destination, right?
yeah,
It's hard to get motivated to get up today to run 5 miles if you're not like, oh, there's a marathon around the corner that I'm training for, right? I
right.
think seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, seeing the destination is helpful in that pursuit.
And that kind of leads me nicely into something I was curious about. When did you decide that your light at the end of the tunnel was going to be being a prosecutor? So, spoiler alert, folks. Uh, Matt works as a prosecutor, just like he worked as a prosecutor on the set of Blue Bloods a few years
Yeah,
ago. So, was
premonition,
that
right?
premonition, right? It was foreshadowing. It was an omen. Did you always kind of have an interest in criminal law? Because I know
Hmm.
you'd mentioned you were interested in policy, and that kind of introduced your pivot to the legal profession. But
Yeah.
when did you realize? Was it maybe during your 1L year that you realized this is the kind of law that I might be interested in?
Yeah, so I think that's great. The the journey is not a straight one, right? We might go in with intentions of like, oh, I think that civil rights law, that sounds interesting. Immigration law is a pretty common one that I hear. International law is pretty common. And like all those are pretty nebulous unless you define them a little bit more. But I went in knowing that I was always interested in criminal law, at least academically. I've been reading John Grisham.
Yeah,
This sounds, silly, but like a lot of his stuff is criminal law, like the Chamber, the Firm, the I think no, the Pelican Brief wasn't, but there's a lot of there's a lot of criminal law in there, and I always found it interesting. I've been reading criminal law books and real life ones. Oh my gosh, now I can't think of the one. It's gonna kill me. It's it's like the perfect crime. The guys who tried to murder the people on the farm in like Iowa. I can't think of the name now, but it's a true
yeah.
crime. It's a true crime
The
novel. I
guys
I
in
was
Chicago, they thought they were smarter than everybody, so they figured out this perfect crime and then they screwed it up anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of different. In Cold Blood is another perfect example, right?
Yeah.
That's an amazing book. So I've been reading these kinds of things. I've been interested in these kinds of things in kind of like a curiosity, fascination kind of way. And when I got to law school, I found property interesting, sure. I found torts interesting, sure. But I loved criminal law when I took it in 1L. It was fascinating to me in a way that the other things were not as much. And so I went, great. Like, I'm gonna get an internship in criminal law, I think. Like, let's go see what that looks like. And so I interned with a local prosecutor's office during 1L and was writing memos about uh, various things, doing research memos over the course of my 1L summer, um, for different projects that the different projects and different cases. I was able to sit in on a whole bunch of special victims unit prosecutions. I was able to sit in on a really it was actually nationally like in the spotlight at the time, the Capitol Gazette shootings, which was a person who went in and shot a bunch of people at a newspaper and then claimed insanity about it. And so I was doing research on like the insanity defense, because everyone was working on that case. And it was just fascinating to me. I really not like a gratuitous way, but I found it really complex, really challenging, and really interesting. And so I just continued down that path for the rest of law school. I took criminal procedure, I took evidence, I took criminal procedure two, I took the role of the state and federal prosecutor in defense. I interned with the criminal appeals division at the attorney general's office for Maryland. I interned at the Supreme Court for Maryland for one of the justices there. I interned for a federal judge on the Federal District of Maryland. I just took all of this stuff that would continue to expose me either specifically to criminal or to criminal and other. And I just continuously enjoyed the challenge of criminal law. I continually enjoyed the difficulties. I continually enjoyed the difficult discussions that come into place with criminal law. And as a prosecutor, like I'm a prosecutor now for Baltimore City, and I specifically do post conviction, which is, this sort of like review 5 to 10 years after the fact. Like, did you get a fair trial? Was your attorney competent? Like these kinds of things, these kinds of fundamental principles of justice that we look for, especially on more serious crimes where people might be incarcerated for decades or the rest of their life. It becomes even more important for that kind of review. I find the challenge philosophically about incarceration interesting. And I want to talk about that. I want to be in the room as a person who's making a decision about those things individually and as like a broader policy. Prosecutors have immense power in the criminal justice system, probably the most power out of anyone. People will be like, oh, no, it's the court, it's the judges. Prosecutorial discretion and choosing whether to charge something or not is the single most powerful thing in our criminal justice system. Choosing how to charge something is the single most powerful thing in our criminal justice system. And I wanted to be the person, frankly, in charge of that because there are a lot of people who do that really poorly. There's a lot of people who use that and are like, no, I'm going to nail this person to the wall 7 ways to Sunday. And like, where's the justice in that? And so I wanted to be in the room talking about those things, grappling with those very challenging issues. And I just find criminal law so fascinating as an addition to that.
I think, and that's going to resonate with a lot of people, I think, because I think people often speak if you ask them, hey, what's your interest? Why do you want to go to law school? One very, very common answer is, I want to be involved in shaping the justice system. Folks, if you want to be involved in shaping the justice system, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So
I hate to tell you, for the most part, it's not the public defenders. The public defenders, I mean, sure, there are policy units in the public defenders unit, and we work closely, either together or antagonistically with the public defenders policy division, uh, with advancing our own policy initiatives for the General Assembly and that kind of stuff. We certainly have legislative priorities. They have their legislative priorities. Sometimes we meet, compromise, do these kinds of things. But if you want to institute policy change, the local elected state's attorney can tomorrow say, we're no longer prosecuting nonviolent drug offenses, period. And in fact, the general or the attorney general under Barack Obama and Biden made those decisions. You can look at the attorney general under Trump and Bush as going the opposite direction. The prosecutors are the ones who are making those broader policy decisions at all steps of the equation, where I think it's much harder for the defense to do those kinds of things because they are focused, as rightly they should be, on their client. I am focused on justice for the state. And those two focuses are very different.
I love it. How can somebody that might be listening to this and might be starting their 1L year soon, or might be in the middle of their 1L year, how can they get on the path to get more involved with a topic area like this? Say they're like you, they
Hmm.
identify with the challenge of uh, the justice
Torts.
system, the challenge of
Yeah,
criminal justice. How do
sure.
you, yeah, say you fall in love with torts. How do you shape your internships and your outside the classroom activities? Like, seems like they were really influential in your decision to pursue this career. How do you
Yeah.
shape those options or those choices, those opportunities from what you learned in the classroom?
Yeah, so pro tip, if you take less classes, you have less reading. And if you take
Fair.
internships for credit, that substitutes for some of your classes. And so
That might
I
be the
want,
biggest tip of the video.
it might be a hidden gem right there. So once I got out of 1L, because you can't really do that during 1L. And almost everybody is going to,
Everybody's going to take the same classes. It's everybody's in the
yeah,
same boat.
it's set. So almost everybody is going to do some sort of internship, externship, work for a law firm during their 1L summer. After that point, though, a lot of people go back and they're like, okay, well, now I'm back at law school and I'm taking 5 classes and I'm doing the things. And I took a lot of experiential internships and externships because I wanted to do practical lawyer shit. I wanted to do the real work. I wanted to do things that I could see the actual impact of that weren't just like working on a practice problem or a practice case or whatever, a hypothetical, if you will, in the classroom. Yes, that's great. In theory, I can learn a ton from doing that kind of stuff too. But I wanted to put myself up to the challenge of doing these kind of internships and externships. And so I did. I continually sought out, and that's what I would recommend. If you're really interested in torts, find a local law firm that has a robust tort practice and go look into that. If you're interested in fair housing, oh my God, you will have so much work for all of the volunteer legal aid societies in your community. If you are interested in patents, I mean, my God, you could sit for the patent bar while you're in law school and go be like in a patent firm doing that kind of stuff. And so to circle back to staying curious, I think that stays curious with your opportunities. Put yourself out there for summers, but also during the year and see what you can encounter. Go law clerk for a firm and do filings. Like you're going to be working really closely. You're going to be drafting motions and doing these kinds of things for attorneys. And you're going to learn what it is really to be an attorney as opposed to some of the, ivory towerness of sitting in an academic classroom and debating what this case from the Supreme Court really means. That stuff is important too. I don't want to, demean that. I took far more classes than I did externships, but I think a lot of people only do them during the summer, and I think that that is a lost opportunity.
That's great advice. And I think that that's going to resonate with people who are coming to law school to practice law. That is a
Yeah. Why not
great
get
piece
out
of
there?
advice. Why not? Why not? And the resources there for people to learn boots on the ground stuff. If you're coming to law school for the academic side of things, that's great too. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's other resources like that. People talk about law
Yeah.
review and stuff.
Totally.
But I
Which
love
I
that. I
also
love
I
that.
also did journal. Like I
Yeah,
did those
and
things
you
too.
can do both. You should probably try both. Try both and see what you like. Is there anything that somebody could do in their first year that sets them up for a successful summer after their 1L year?
Yes, and I have something really specific towards this a really specific piece of advice that I wish that I had had, and is always my go-to advice for everyone who's like, "Ooh, what's your one thing that you wish you knew about law school?" After your first semester, you're gonna have just drunk from the fire hose from in a way that you've never done before. You're learning how to law school at the same time as learning civil procedure or and torts and whatever else. My first semester was contracts, torts, civil procedure, um, lawyering one, which is like legal writing at other schools, and intro to legal research. So I did all those things, took my exams, and I wanted to die. I wanted to spend the next 6 weeks doing nothing. My brain was mashed potatoes. And like, I was, uh, I mean, deservedly so. I took a break. I took too much of a break, though, because there's some stuff that you need to do during that time off in order to make your second semester and specifically your summer successful. And that is you need to get your resume in order. You need to get your writing sample in order and who your recommenders are going to be so that as soon as you get your 1L fall grades, which is going to happen like the first week or so of January, that's when all the applications open for summer work. And so if you're trying to get all that stuff together at the same time as you've started the second semester, you're now drinking from the fire hose again, and you're trying to search for jobs, and you're trying to apply for jobs, and you're trying to get your stuff in order. It is frustrating. That was my worst semester in law school grade wise because I had such split attention. Um, I did not do the work up front to get my resume and my writing sample in order. And my advice is long-windedly but summed up, take a little bit of time off after finals, in between finals and the holidays. Absolutely, you should. You deserve it. Take a break. Take a week. But then get your resume in order, get your writing sample in order, and start to pinpoint some jobs you want to apply for as soon as the doors open for that. Because that sets you up for success where it's just like, oh, submit. Yep. Oh, here's another one. Submit. Rather than going through all the rigor and rigmarole of trying to herd the cats of your materials as well as being successful in the classroom.
I love it. And that's the kind of concrete, actionable advice that seems really simple, but is going to save you a lot of heartache down the line.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I think can make the difference between hating your first year and being pretty miserable, and maybe being a little less miserable,
Yeah.
and maybe having a bit more success.
And having a bit more success for your first or your first year job, right? Like
Yeah,
I missed out on applications for sure because I wasn't ready.
yeah. And I mean that's the kind of stuff that, not to product placement tie-in, but we're trying to share this advice on the podcast, but we're also writing content, and Matt is heavily involved with writing and editing the content that we're putting out for Crushing 1L. But I guess the idea is we want to start sharing some of these anecdotes and pieces of advice
Yep.
with people so that they can marinate a little bit. You're going to get so much thrown at you. I don't know why I'm saying you. I'm going to get so much thrown at me
Yeah,
personally in
you
just a
are.
few
I'm
months.
already done with this.
I know. You're done. You're on the other side. I am staring down the barrel at all of this craziness. And just to be able to sit down, I mean, I'm in such a fortunate position, but I think our community is really fortunate because we can sit down with team members and community members like you and just hear some of this great advice. And we're trying to translate some of that content or some of those, some of those anecdotes, some of those ideas into the content in Crushing One L. So if I had to make a pitch for, hey, just check it out, click around, is that you're gonna see stuff, you're gonna see these stories, this great advice, and hopefully just set you up for a bit of a better time,
Yeah.
a little bit of a better time.
I mean, so one of the things that it's really important for me and why I want to help with, like, why I'm emotionally invested in helping with 1L, other crushing 1L, other than like it's part of my job, right? Like I have signed on, is part of my responsibilities to help with that project now. One of the reasons why I'm emotionally attached to it, though, is that all throughout law school, after I got through 1L, I became a um, we called them academic achievement fellows. And so I was helping 1Ls navigate law school and be better at law school. I had like my mentees, I had my class, like I had anywhere from 4 to 30 at any given time of people that I was regularly meeting with, trying to help them out navigating what this process is so that they could be successful. And that's was really, really rewarding. It has led to me to now I teach and tutor the bar as well. And I actually teach at the University of Maryland. I went back as a lecturer in their bar prep program to help in the past semester. You know, I'm a year out of law school and I'm already helping teach there. It's really
You're a
important for
teacher.
me.
You're a teacher at heart, Matt. You're a teacher at heart.
Totally. And I'm going to just put this out there. Attorneys are teachers. Like we are there
Yeah,
to teach the court. And so I don't think it's a gross deviation from like my life's work, but the idea of helping and give back and teach is really, really important for people that don't have that support elsewhere. Your first gen college, let alone first gen law school, right? No attorneys. First off, I want to encourage you today. You can go on LinkedIn and look up some attorneys and potential practice areas that you're interested in. Reach out to them, offer to meet with them for Zoom or take them to coffee or whatever because you're really interested in doing that kind of thing. You can do that kind of stuff now. But knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Familiarity is so crucial towards hitting the ground running, being successful in these things. Because if it's shocking, it's hard to grasp. If it's familiar, it's easier to grasp. And that's one of the reasons why the crushing 1L materials are so important to me on like an emotional level. I want to help people who may not have other places to turn to familiarize themselves with what law school is, to familiarize themselves with what the court system is, to familiarize themselves with what torts and criminal law are, so that they can be more successful in a place where they may not feel supported. That's just so crucial.
I love it. And that, I mean, that resonates with me. I mean, that's the reason that I'm super, super happy to be part of this. As somebody who didn't grow up around any attorneys either,
Yeah.
coming from a military background, and then, I'm so fortunate to work with so many attorneys and legally adjacent people, I suppose. Uh, and everybody in our community is so capable. And I think part of what we do really well is that we introduce people to the idea that they can do it. You
Yep.
come to the demon, and we tell you we can increase your score literally as many points as you're willing to work
Yep.
for, at least. And part of that narrative is it doesn't matter from what walk of life you come from. And this is something that we talked about earlier, just
Yeah.
a few minutes ago. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, you can kick ass at this test. Similarly, no matter what walk of life you're coming from, and now you've studied with us for the LSAT, we want to make it so that you can kick ass at law school too.
Yep.
And obviously doing well in the LSAT's a big part of that. They're definitely not unrelated. but even just like you said, be a little bit more familiar with the language of law school, and
Yep.
you'd be surprised how much more comfortable you can be in a new environment.
Yeah, the you can focus on what this case means rather than what a case is, right? And
Yeah,
I think that kind of knowledge, that kind of foundation is just really, really helpful. You can focus on the things that you're there to learn rather than get caught up in the things that you're expected to know already.
man. I can't think of a better place to stop because I think that we're not going to beat that. I'm not going to say anything that beats that. So let's call it here. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I
My
learned so
absolute
much
pleasure.
just from chatting with you, and I've been learning so much from working on these projects with you. So thank you so much, folks. Thanks for listening. That's it for this episode of Crushing 1L. Huge thanks again to Matt. And if you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the other We have we have three podcasts at this point. Subscribe to any one of them, and keep studying with us at the LSAT Demon. And you can share this stuff with your friends or maybe somebody else in your life that's maybe thinking about law school. But until then, until I see you next time, I'm Abhi, and keep crushing it.